2016, mahigit 500 social action workers na ang nabigyan ng Caritas Philippines Academy ng iba't ibang capacity development program. Katulong ang Development Academy of the Philippines at Future by Design Pilipinas. Nagawa natin ang 14-month certificate course na Lead to Heal Transformational Development Program. Sa pakikipag-partner natin sa Asian Social Institute, nagkaroon tayo ng masteral course on social services and development. Mahigit 15 modular courses din ang naisagawa natin kahit sa gitna ng COVID-19 pandemic. At Caritas Philippines Academy, we develop church leaders and professionals with a heart.
Open ng camera. Ready na po ba kayo? Dito sa mga speaker na clap-clap, yung heart, celebration, yung mga emojis, yung mga screen. Tingin muna so that you would know na ready na po kayo. You're 68 already in the Zoom room. So, ayan. Si Sister Giselle, nagtatanong kung okay lang kung hindi nakapag-attendance ng bata. Nancy will be sharing with you again the link nung attendance para po kayo o medyo make sure natin ma-validate that everybody is safe. Will be here. Okay, sige. So, we'll be starting off already our with our session this afternoon. Kaya po, hinihingi po namin sa inyong lahat no, na we really take note din sa mga mangyayari this afternoon, especially the sabihin, share sa atin ng ating mga students. Okay? So, ito po yung nagpapatuloy na online conversations on gender-based violence, effective interventions in the survivor-centered approach, a re-echo webinar na hatid mo sa atin ng Caritas Philippines Academy course with Caritas Philippines. So, kaninang umaga po, nakasama natin si Ms. Glad, Ms. naman, at saka Dr. Sandy Montang, Philippine Commission on Women. Po, we will be going international as because
Oh, I think Jing was disconnected. Okay. So, she's talking about that for the first session, Miss Dr. Sandy Montano was discussed about the background of gender-based violence, the perspective, the situation in the Philippines and in Israel. So for this afternoon, we will talking about the experience of Israel and the experience of one of our scholar in MASHAV in Uzbekistan. But before that, I think Miss Jing is still not yet around. So
I'm here.
Miss Jing?
Is Radio
Yeah.
Ambassador? Yeah, I'm here.
Yes po. Yeah. Ambassador Ilan. So because our host Jing was disconnected, so I am doing the honor to introduce you to our participants. Please welcome the Ambassador of Israel to the Philippines, Ambassador, to give the solidarity message for this event. Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. Should I give the message now? I just was difficult to hear you. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So good afternoon. I'm really honored to be invited to give a few words here. These meaningful conversations on gender-based violence. It is a very important issue, very close to our hearts. And so first of all, I'd say that it was really very important for us when we hosted a few people from the Philippines, including Sir Nelsie and Sandy, sort of the Caritas, the Commission, and also from the local government. You attended in Israel a seminar on issue of violence against women. In Israel, in MASHAV, and in Israel, it is very important issue which is being addressed constantly, and they're always looking for new and different kinds of solutions. Now, after we have such international programs in Israel, actually our most important purpose of these programs is to have a continuation of the program in Israel, a continuation in the countries themselves. So this meeting today, and this, the title is Meaningful Conversations, which is extremely meaningful because we have to exchange practices, we have to share practices in order to improve all the time what we are doing in the different countries, and then also to see in what way we can collaborate. So this session today is a very important continuation of what we did in Israel. And for me, as the Israeli ambassador, I would say that it is also extremely important and interesting for me to see on what kind of partnerships we can create as a result, as an outcome, this discussion today, because we would like to see this relationship and the transfer of best practices and experiences here to the Philippines as much as possible and collaborate with you. As the Israeli ambassador, I can tell you that these issues for me are the top of our priority, to have our exchange on development programs and to see how we can do things together better, which is, at the end of the day, this is benefiting our societies. And when you also work with other societies, you always actually bring also better practices back to your own country. So international collaboration benefits everybody. With those few words, I know you have a very busy schedule, and for a few days, I cannot stay obviously at this meeting, but I wanted to really to congratulate Caritas and the Commission on Women for initiating this event, and to say that we are here in the Israeli Embassy and myself as ambassador committed to continue this partnership. And I would say from here that we are open also to not only to have more seminars and workshops in Israel, but also if there are challenges, opportunities where we can also contribute to specific projects, please, we are very open to also get involved in projects on the ground that really make a difference for the life of women. If it is on projects on the ground, if it is discussing legislation or best practices on national level, on local level, or as organizations. So again, I wish all of you a very interesting afternoon. And maybe one last word. In Israel, before we leave, we say shalom. Shalom means goodbye. Mabuhay. But shalom also means hello and also means peace. And if we use as much as possible this word shalom, I think this is something that is not only hello and goodbye, but is also wishing us peace as we live. And I hope this is, and I believe this is what we need in our societies. It is peace. And through peace, you can also develop the society and have more prosperity and better standards of living, and give better opportunities for all elements and all parts of society, if it is men, women, children and youth, disabled, people from the rural areas and from the urban areas. So we have to make sure that everybody will have an opportunity to participate as a full and equal citizen in the processes in the country. So thank you very, very much, and I look forward for continuation of this collaboration.
Thank you,
Salamat.
Ambassador. His Excellency Ambassador Ilan Plus of Israel. So thank you for the opportunity that you provided with us, for sending us in Israel, and also for taking time, even if you are so busy today, to grace this occasion, and also your commitment for the future collaboration with our Social Action Network and other partners here in this webinar. So I would like to take this opportunity for really say thank you for the commitment and all the collaboration that we have started. So thank you, sir, and good afternoon. Shalom.
Thank you. Shalom.
So, okay, for today, dear friends and our partners in social action centers, so please forgive us. We are talking in pure English today because our speaker is coming from different part of the world. So maybe to move forward, I would like to introduce you our speaker. She is one of our classmates, one of the scholars in MASHAV during our international conference on combating gender-based violence. She's human rights lawyer, very busy person. That's why we are very grateful that she is accepting our invitation today. So I would like to introduce you Attorney Delfusa from Uzbekistan. So what's the time now there, attorney?
Hello, it's 10:45 a.m.
Okay, so she will be talking about the role of justice in combating the gender-based violence based on the experience in her country and her experience in learning during our course in Israel. Over to you, attorney.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much, dear colleagues and friends, I can call it friends, for inviting and organizing such an interesting event. Thank you so much. I'm very much delighted for that. So let me share my screen with a small presentation that I prepared for today. I will also be happy if someone, at the end of the presentation would like to ask any questions, and we will have very lively debate. So today I'm going to talk mostly about comparison, or what I have found interesting in Israel comparing what is going on in Uzbekistan in terms of combating gender-based violence. Just a second. Yeah. So just to compare and see where I'm from and where we have been. So there's two maps, if you see. So one is Israel. Its territory to 22, a little bit more of 22,000 square kilometers. Population in 9.6 million already. And women are more than 50% of the population. And if you compare it to the right side of the screen, to the map of Uzbekistan, you can see the territory is much more bigger, and it's 448 or 49,000 square meters, and the population is way more than Israel. It's almost 36 million population, and a little bit less of 50%. It's 49.6% of population are women in my country. You see that if you compare two countries geographically and demographically, you see that Uzbekistan is much more bigger than Israel. But then when I was in Israel together with our friends from Philippines, we could actually see that even being small, they could establish very fine, circled, ended a system of gender-based violence or protection of victims from gender-based violence. And it was like really fascinating for me. So I'm really happy to share my observations and comparison to my country. Maybe it will also be resembling to you as well. So if we look to the justice system, I will be just a little bit, of course, I'm not working in justice system of Israel, but then from our colleagues and friends and, from representative of Ministry of Justice and Police, what we have learned there. So you can see that Ministry of Justice is in charge of assuring rule of law in the country. So they are establishing and adopting rules to combat gender-based violence and what is necessarily for to making this issue and topic less existing in the country. And they also provide free legal aid. So it was for me fascinating that Ministry of Justice, they have a special department which actually work with people. They provide free legal aid. It's starting from consultations and ending to representing in the courts. And for me, it was really fascinating that the Ministry of Justice actually, even if they don't have enough staff within the ministry, they are allowed to bring other external lawyers. They pay for that, and lawyers provide free assistance to victims of gender-based violence. So as I say, that's providing necessarily legal services as well. It's not only consultations, but it also can be representing in the courts, which is, I think, very important when we're talking about gender-based violence and victims of gender-based violence. On other hand, they also have Israel Police, who is in charge of order and security. They also start investigation of the cases. They have 150 special trained police to work on gender-based violence cases around the country. And for such a small population in comparison to Uzbekistan, I think 150 small departments and trained and specially trained police is fascinating. It also shows and illustrates that police is paying very great attention to the problem, and any victim of GBV who is coming and addressing to police, they receive the adequate services and they receive adequate responses to the services. Also, they can detain the perpetrator. So they are in charge if they think that the perpetrator is, it's really dangerous. They also can detain or arrest for a couple of hours, and then of course it has to go through the court, through the family court of Israel. So also we realize that they have Aluma centers, which is a one, like, let's say, single one-stop shop for GBV victims. And inside of these centers, they actually have police officers who are sitting and providing right-away service, right-away in these centers. So I think it's also very good for, combating gender-based violence in general in society. Here's a beautiful picture of the Supreme Court of Israel, if I'm not mistaken. So this is what I found on the internet. In Israel, there's a special family court to review gender-based violence cases. Working with judiciary system and judges in Uzbekistan, I could say that this is very good division, because when people come with their family issues and especially with violence in families, when we're talking about domestic violence, we expect that parties, especially victims, are so much vulnerable that they need a special attitude and assistance. And I think in this case, having a separate family court, it also puts its additional added value in reviewing these cases. Also, decision on shelter, the family court in Israel, they issue decision on shelters. If they think if the women have to be placed in shelter or they have to live in other services, they can also decide on that. We also figured out that whatever cases on gender-based violence in terms of children, it also has to go through judiciary. So justice, the court themselves decide whether the institution is acceptable or affordable to these people and families. Also, they issue protection orders. If they think that protection order is needed, then they are, issuing it. And also, you should be noted that perhaps you have heard that the punishment for gender-based violence, it's really, really hard. So they can be not only in jail, but most of the people afraid of being fined for gender-based violence. Whomever I talked, who's living in Israel or used to live, they also say that it's so high fines that people, really refrain to commit this crime. If we talk about the justice system in Uzbekistan, it's a little bit more complicated. So we have a Ministry of Justice, which is only responsible to ensure rule of law. So they actually do not provide free legal consultations or free legal aid. But what they do is they cooperate with NGO Madat. And this NGO is specifically established in order to provide free legal aid. So they can, I'm not sure that they can go and represent in the court, but what they can do is provide legal consultations, provide legal assistance, let's say writing a notes and providing all necessary means so person or victim of domestic violence can go to the court, apply and seek for restoration of their rights. So this is what the Ministry of Justice is doing. They actually do not take any actions, let's say, go to the court, protect, and restore the rights. Because in these terms, we have other ministries and organizations. So now next is the Ministry of Interior, who is in charge of investigation of the cases. So let's say Israeli police is within the Ministry of Interior of Uzbekistan. So they are dealing on gender-based cases in cooperation with Mahala. Mahala is a community So in Israel, we could see that kibbutza is kind of the similar structure as Mahala in Uzbekistan. So it's like community. And in community, we have the leader. So usually police officers in each region or in each district, they closely work with Mahalas. So if the gender-based violence case is happening in one of the families and victim is going to report to the police will come with Mahala leader, the community leader, and then they go and ask if this take place, what happened, and then they try to, see what is the implications in the families, what are the possible tensions they could have. They also can ask their neighbors if they knew about these situations and etc. So they basically working with Mahala at very ground level. Then, of course, the police officers, they have rights to detain, to arrest. So it's not necessarily go through the judiciary system or through the courts. They can actually arrest them for 15 days. So it's their exclusive rights, and 15 days are maximum for detention or arrest. Then they can also issue protection orders. So in comparison to Israel, which the court is in charge of issuing protection order, in Uzbekistan is only police who can actually give the protection order. So if the victim would like to get any kind of protection order, they have to go to the police. They have to ask for that. And by the law, when victim is asking for protection order, they have to issue it within 24 days, and it's issued only for 30 days maximum. But then if the victim thinks that, no, we need more extension, then they can extend for another 30 days. So maximum protection order can be issued for 60 days, which is 2 months. And of course, from the conversations from experience of Israel, we understand that 2 months is not enough for the victim to restore their rights or to get rid of this perpetrator and the domestic violence in the family. Then we also have a prosecutor's general office who is investigating as well the cases. So women or victim of domestic violence, it can be men as well, they first go to the police. But if they police and police is ignoring the complaint of the victim can go to prosecution office. And prosecution office or prosecutor general office, they actually can initiate the case in the court. They have this exclusive right. Police cannot issue they cannot start the case in the court, but prosecutor can do it. And then they are supervising all activities and cases of the police. So if the victim is coming and saying police did not work and I have gender-based violence case, prosecutor can actually start the case, start investigation, and also can check why and how the police officer did not open the case. So unfortunately, we had many cases when police are ignoring domestic violence in the family. So the victim is calling domestic violence. So you know that women are they are more victims of domestic violence rather than men. There are many reasons why, but one of the reasons that men never say that they are victims of domestic violence. It's the same with the trafficking. So the studies show that men never say that they are traffic, but they say that they have very bad labor conditions rather than women. So in gender-based violence cases, the same. So women are more affected by gender-based violence cases. And then when they go to police in Uzbekistan, and police is family with mahalas, they try to convince the women that it's okay, it's fine. Beating meaning loving, beating meaning that the man is, caring and etc. So it's a sign of the love, sign of the family, or they try to say that woman is the pride of the family, so that's why they have to keep their mouth shut. So this is what is happening usually. And when victims are not happy, let's say, with what is going on with the police, they can go to the prosecution office, which actually prosecution is doing, their job, and they're investigating even over the police. Then we have, of course, the judiciary, the justice system, which is courts. You see this is a picture of our Supreme we don't have family cases, but we have civil cases. So courts on civil cases, they usually review the cases on domestic violence. And again, it really divided into two terms. So we also have a court on criminal cases. If the gender-based violence connected or the core of the issue is divorce, or something connected to family issues and not necessarily crimes, they go to civil cases. But if the violence or crime committed, it's related to criminal procedure, let's say beating, or let's say, physical humiliation, torture, then it goes to a criminal court. So it doesn't go to the civil cases. It goes to criminal court. In criminal court decide the value, or let's say the qualification of the crime. But divorce, as a consecutive of this violence, let's say, it goes to the civil cases. So it's really complicated. For ordinary people, they might not know these difficulties. They go to civil cases, for instance, or they go to criminal cases. And then sometimes they end up with, going round and round to one court. So it's a little bit complicated. That's why we also have this Madat NGO from the previous slide, where a Ministry of Justice or this NGO is trying to help and show what is actually going on there. So it's really a little bit complicated system. Also, gender-based violence victims are exempt from any kind of court fee. In 2019, Uzbekistan adopted the law on protection of women from oppression and violence. And this law actually, Article 30, if I'm not mistaken, they are saying that any victim of domestic violence who would like to proceed with the court on, let's say, moral damage claim or any kind of damage claim, they are exempt from court fees. But again, in order to show that the person was a victim of domestic violence, they should be recordings. And recordings are provided by police in Mahala. So first, we have to go to police in Mahala, get the, this, let's say, certificate or protocol of the meetings, and then together with it, she or he have to apply to the court in order to get tax exams or court fee exams. So if we are talking about legal system or laws that, legal framework where we operate and work in Israel and Uzbekistan, we could see that criminalization of domestic violence is long away in Israel. So we understood that even 80s, Israel already adopted a law which is prohibiting any kind of domestic violence. So domestic violence is actually in Israel criminalized. So this is no question. If the domestic violence is criminalized by the law, it means the victim of domestic violence can easily go to the court or judiciary system or any kind of, government organizations and law enforcement, and they can actually protect their rights. While in comparison to Israel, in Uzbekistan, domestic violence is unfortunately is not criminalized. So now it's just under the law, and law just say that this is a violence. I mean, women cannot be a victim of domestic violence and etc. But it doesn't go to any kind of civil code or criminal code or administrative code. So it means like when the person goes with the law, but when judge would like to take any kind of punishment for this offense, to go through the code. So, and the code, criminal and administrative code, which actually has these punishments for any kind of offenses or crimes, they don't have explanation of domestic violence. So usually what it goes is like if the person, a perpetrator is beating, then it goes to to physical damage, and then you have a level. So you have easy, mid, and then hard level. So in order to be in easy, even in easy, a woman has to be hospitalized for 2 weeks. So if she's not hospitalized, the victim, then actually court can say, no, it was not, physical hard offense or hard beating. So that's why they can put the fine, I don't know, approximately $20, which is really nothing. But if the domestic violence would be criminalized, in these cases, actually, it could go very hard. Now, I'm also a member of gender committee under the Senate of Uzbekistan, and the Senate is now reviewing the law on protection of children from violence and oppression. And there we actually, in connection to this law, we are reviewing other laws as well, which will be implicated. And we are including, we are changing, let's say, criminal administrative legislation, and we're adding the crimes committed by family member or intimate members, intimate partners. It will be offenses that is putting an additional layer for punishment. So it will be very, very hard if the person, family member, is committed a crime on violence. Then if we're talking about a separate protection system, we also can say that in Israel, there is a separate protection systems, right? So you also have law, you have police, you have a trained judiciary. While in Uzbekistan, now we also have one policeman or police officers, they're usually women, are dealing with families in the regions, in districts. But then we also see that they are under. We don't have such police officers in each police station. It's only in big cities. Now they are growing, of course. They are doing very hard to ensure that more people will be available. I mean, police officers will be available. But unfortunately, we see that not everyone is trusting them, I mean, victims, and they cannot really provide such kind of systematic approach to domestic violence. And then we see that in Israel, it's very circled mechanisms of protect victims of domestic violence. While in Uzbekistan, we have this and there. If you do the mapping, so you say like, we have preliminary elements in everywhere, but the system as a whole is not yet completed. And then, of course, it's really important when you have, when you talk about legal aspects of GBV, it's a legal status of GBV victim. So as an example, I will provide from the human trafficking. So when crime and saying that it's criminalized human trafficking or sexual exploitation, but then if women are coming and saying, you know, we were victims of prostitution, of, I don't know, victims of trafficking, then they have to explain and prove with evidences. Then in 2010, there was an adoption of law, and in 2017, there were another law which says that victims of domestic violence, it's a status. So they don't have to now show or explain that they are victims of human trafficking. They just go complain the court, and presumption of innocence is not applicable in these cases. If we're talking about gender-based violence, unfortunately, it's not the case. So any victim of domestic violence, if they're going to the court, they have to prove that they are victims. They have to provide all kind of evidences that perpetrator beated her, that perpetrator actually humiliated. So a victim has to show all evidences they have. Otherwise, it will be against the rights of the perpetrator, because this is a principle. I mean, in judiciary, we have a principle of presumption of innocence, meaning that nobody can be charged without without court decision and evidences. So it will be her word, victim's word and perpetrator word against each other. So without the victim status, if the victim goes to the court, the burden of the evidence lies with the victim itself. And since it's a very Muslim dominated population in my country, usually if, for example, 16 or I don't know, 20 years old girl raped by, I don't know, a man, or let's say by a neighbor or intimate partner, and they go to the court, usually they are ashamed. So it's a victim blaming. And imagine 18 or 20 years old girl would never go and say I'm raped, because she will be ashamed, she will be not knowing her rights, and if she has to go and try to provide evidences and show that she is a victim, and she cannot provide any legal evidences, because the perpetrator will be saying, oh, I don't know her, I have never seen her. So this can be a case, and usually it is a case. That's why legal status of gender-based violence victims are really important for providing protective systems for victims. So I think my time is also up. I have yet 15 to 20 minutes, and I will be more than happy to hear from participants any kind of comments, questions, and I also leave my email here if somebody would like to contact me. But I'm really happy for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, attorney, and thank you very much for the enlightenment that you've shared with us, especially in the differences between how gender-based violence is being viewed between Israel and then Uzbekistan. We'd like to just know from the course that you've had with Israel, what's most striking about the differences that you've had between your country and Israel in terms of really treating gender-based violence as something that's like an everyday occurrence, especially in several of the families that we have.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, actually, what really inspired me, or let's say, what was striking and shocking, that in Israel, they have a whole system. So if the victim comes to the police, let's say, or they come to the shelter themselves, they call their civil servants or social services, they get the protection. While in Uzbekistan, we still are facing this problem. So for me, it was really, as I said at the beginning, the country is so small and population is so small. And then you see that they have more stronger system. Maybe it's also partially because we're big, and that's why it's more harder to establish the system. But I think Israel gave a clear illustration that if you have a system and judiciary and legal offices are working together with the social services, it will also help to combat gender-based violence.
Thank you very much, attorney. Another question would be, in terms of culture, especially in Uzbekistan, how did it change over time in the view of gender-based violence? Was there any salient change or important change in the system, for example, in especially how the government treats these kinds of cases, and even how NGOs in your country treat this case?
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, actually, it's a really good question. Thank you. So we had a very big political transition period in 2016 when our first and previous president died, and then another new government came to the power. So I think this was a crucial turning point for gender-based violence, discussions, because we are Muslim-dominated, Muslim-dominated population. A majority of people in Uzbekistan are Muslims, and in this country, and also it's very traditional. Traditional. Of course, it's not like in Iran or in other Muslim countries. We are not. We are civil countries, civic, let's say. But at the same time, these traditions, this masculine society is still preserving in a country. So woman role, gender roles are very, very crucial here. And if woman goes and say, I would like to go to police office themselves are not really much expecting that the woman will join and take, higher positions, because they have to deal a part of their job with the family, with the children, and etc. And then there was no a culture, no anything to discuss publicly about domestic violence. So before 2017 or even 18, I would say like people would never ever go to the street and discuss about the gender-based violence. Nobody even discussed about women can have a career and have no child. So it was not even meant to do this. But since new government came and they start saying, at the highest level that women playing a crucial role in the politics, in economy, and in society, and they have their own roles, then I think it started a turning point in the country. Now, in 2019, we adopted 2 laws. One is on gender-based violence, another is on equality of men and women in political and social. This is also another turning point when women have actually, legally binding, the government have legally binding obligations to promote women, to protect them. So I think these recent, I would like say maybe 4 or 5 years, are really, social changes happening in the country. Women start knowing their rights, and they start, claiming their rights, saying, okay, we are equal. We can go and work. We have to be treated equally, men and women. So I think here now what the process is going and tendency going in Uzbekistan is a clash. The government actually has this legal base and obligation to promote women. Women understand it, but the society itself, I think now they are clashing in mind and saying, okay, now we have to do it. But at the same time, we don't want to do it because we already had this tradition, long-standing tradition. And I think now I truly believe on behavioral change, but it requires the time. It cannot happen in one day. But I think with social activism, with human rights, with the governmental and political support, I think it will take a change for upcoming 5 years.
Thank you again, Attorney. That's a very good sharing on the changes that you made, especially with the government initiating these changes, because it's really something that would matter, especially for people even here in the Philippines, we are also seeing those kinds of changes, but again, it's still a long way to go. There is one question coming from, I think, one of your classmates, from Zara of Uganda. She was asking, what do you think you can do to break the stigma cycle in your country so that girls can be empowered to speak out?
Thank you so much, Sarah. Very, very nice to see you here. Well, I think at what point, since I'm really engaged into civil society activities and human rights, I think what we do, and I do as well, is to have massive advocacy campaigns. This is the only thing and the only way when you can promote and say that these are opportunities for women. And also the rhetorics, what I have and my colleagues have to say, it's not like purely feminism that we have in the Western countries, but it has to be localized, because when you come and say, let's say to your parents or to your husband, and imagine that you were living with them for 15, 20 years with your husband, or to your parents at the age of 50, 60, that you are not anymore cleaning the house, or you're not anymore cooking, and then you want to spend your 18 hours at work. I don't think that they will support you. I don't think that they will even understand you. But then if you change the rhetoric and say like, I have a lot of work and I need your assistance, so if you can, help me, I will be happy. I think these rhetorics, it's the same thing, but with the different wording. And I think this adoption of the standards and localization is important and vital. So what we are doing as a human rights lawyer, and I also provide free legal consultations. I also give public speeches, and I also say that it's not about like being a feminist and saying we abandon men, we don't like them, we want them killed or whatever. We don't say that. We just need equal opportunities and a little bit help when it's needed. Yeah. So and support. So I think here one thing is an advocacy. It can be public consultations, public speeches. It can be leaflets, free assistance and free services, and etc. So the work of civil society and activists. Second is changing the rhetorics to explain, especially to women itself as well. So if you want to be independent, it doesn't mean that you have to divorce and stay alone. So it just to say that you are capable. And the third, I think it's important to develop the woman solidarity, because we see that men has more solidarity to each other rather than women have solidarity between them, and to delete this, competition, because I face, I see it a lot, and for me, it's really, I'm a little bit shocked to see such kind of things, and I was like, why don't you support the women? Why don't you support your sisters? What I mean. So I think it's important these three things, what we are doing, because behavioral change is taking a lot of effort and a lot of time. It's not the technical thing that you can adopt the law, do the trainings, and no, it needs a time, and it needs more efforts and education and advocacy.
Thank you again, attorney. Last question, but before that, would like to say hello to Brother Roman Jacinto, the GAD coordinator of Cavite State University Tanzac campus. Okay, from Ate Ava, do victims undergo also to be interviewed by a psychologist or psychiatrist know if they are really abused, or it is just a reason to escape?
Thank you so much. Actually, this is a really interesting question, because unfortunately, psychologists and psychotherapists services are not the. So if you go to psychologists, it means like you are a stupid dumb. And then people would not even go and say, I'm attending psychologist or psychotherapist, which is really healthy. I mean, after COVID, we face health issues, problems, and we also have all the time, we have a stress, and then it can be a burnout situations and etc. But then in my country, and culture is not accepted, or is not really considered as a serious thing to go to the psychologist and therapist. So to answer your question, first, there's no such a services developed in the country. I mean, we do have, but it is very private, or it is because of the disability assessment, as a part of disability assessment when it comes to mental health disability. It is assessed within the investigation. Let's say somebody committed a crime, and then the court or party has a clue, or they have a question that he committed a crime because of mental illness or sickness. Then they go to the assessment. But so you see that there is no developed system. There is no such a requirement to be interviewed by psychologists or psychotherapists. But at the same time, police, they sometimes invite psychologists or psychotherapists in order to show if they are really abused, or really they are victims of domestic violence. But when it happens, not because of they think that it is, it is needed. But when they see that victim itself cannot protect their rights, or they cannot say who are the perpetrator. In some cases, the girls, especially young girls, had so much abuse, psychologically abused, that they cannot even speak. So in these kind of situations, hala members or let's say family members of the victim or neighbors, they can go to police and say, you know what, we need a psychologist. In these cases, police can invite people, psychologists or psychotherapists, but in other cases, it's not obligatory. But I think it would be nice to have it, because in Israel, social services, they are available 24/7. And then if there's a case of domestic violence, they must go to the interview, through the interview. And then the social services workers, social workers, they say, yes, they abused, or there's a violence going on in the family. And then this is like a remark for them, but not in the general, revision of the cases.
Thank you again. Last question, attorney. I'm looking at the watch, and then I know that you needed to leave, but just last question. Were you able to, like, personally, were you able to also experience some kind of discrimination or violence or abuse growing up, and then how were you able to handle this for your family?
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, first of all, my family also always say that violence, in our family, violence is not accepted at all. So I never heard and never saw and witnessed that my family, my parents are, showing some violence and abuse to each other. So for me, it was something that, unacceptable. So I didn't even understand what can happen. Of course, when I faced discrimination, it was in my work and my study. I never thought that this is a discrimination, actually. I was thinking, okay, maybe I'm not capable. One of the examples is that we have a military service, a mandatory military service for men, and for women is not mandatory. Only doctors, after their professional graduation and being a doctor, they have, responsibility to attend the war or conflict zone if there's a war and then country decide to mobilize people. So only doctors have this, special, military service certificate. But then part of that, all men have to go and women are not. So in universities, we also had this military service department, where you can combine with your study. And I was thinking that maybe it's good also for me to have this military service. And I tried to get in there. But unfortunately, I was like all the time say that, oh, I don't have this document, I have to pass this exam, I have to do this and that. And then when I collected all documents and came, they say that I'm not eligible because the deadline passed. So, and I also thought, okay, maybe I'm wrong and I did something bad and etc. But then it appeared, now I understand that this was a discrimination. They made anything possible, so I will not get into that. Another thing is with the pregnant woman. So we say we have a system when women have, not women, let's say any parent can get up to 2 years of paid parental leave. But by default, the women are taking this 2-year leave rather than men or family members. So in these cases, we see that employers are really not willing to continue working with the women, especially women just married or having one kid, because they know that assume a woman will have second, third, and then kids. So when I get married, I remember I was pregnant and I was fired when I was 8 months pregnant. Of course, they were not allowed to do it, but what they say that my contract is 1-year contract and they will not extend, because physically I cannot attend the classes and I cannot attend my work. So this is understandable. Of course, I was pregnant for 8 months, and then after a month I had to deliver the baby. And of course, physically I could not attend. But this was official reason. And of course, when I tried to say, okay, I will go and sue for illegal let's say, termination of the contract, then of course they say that this is a very political issue and it's much better not to do it. So this was the case, and then of course I overuse it. Later on, they proposed me another job, but no, I could not continue that. But I know that many women are facing such a situation. For me, it was not the big deal, but in general, I think it's incorrect, and I always give this example saying that women are really employment insecure, especially when they're pregnant or they have small kids. They are not promoted as well because they think that, okay, if they have a children, they have to stay at home and etc. So of course I am an example. I also try to be an example saying, like, being a mother, it doesn't mean that you have to always be backlashing. No, you can be a leader as well. But then, of course, you have to fight for this right, and then, spot on the sun. So this is a small story.
Thank you very much for sharing your personal story, attorney, and we are really very happy to listen to them. And also, we are thankful of your time, of your expertise, of your insights that's being shared with us, especially with our audience here in the Zoom and also in the over at Facebook page. So again, thank you very much. Would
Thank you
like to
so
share
much.
with you on screen the certificate of appreciation for really deliberately sharing with us everything that you've had, not only the things learned during the course in Israel, but also your experiences in Uzbekistan. Thank you very much, Attorney Maria
Thank you.
Del Souza Kurulova. Thank you, a human rights
Thank you.
lawyer, mediator for women and children, now not only in Uzbekistan but also in the Philippines. Again, thank you so much on behalf of Father Tony Labiao and Bishop Colin Bagaforo. Thank you very much. Okay, and
Wish you good luck.
thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye po. We would like to also say thank you to everybody, especially to our Zoom attendees who are very active in the chat room, expressing everything that they wanted to say. Okay, now moving forward, we have again another 30 minutes of sharing of their experiences. This is Israel and Kenya this time. So we would be talking about the role of health services in combating abuse and long-term treatment of sexual abuse trauma survivors. And to share with us their experiences, we have from AWP Program Manager, National AIDS and STI Control Program in Kenya. We have with us this afternoon Dr. Hermes W. Gitchane. Good afternoon, Dr. Hermes, and welcome to the Philippines. Welcome to Caritas Philippines Academy. You are muted.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask if you can share the slides with me because I'm currently traveling. I'm actually in an airport. Sorry about that. I think there was a mix-up with the times for my flight. So, but I'm happy to be here and I'll be try and give as much information as I can. And thank you also for inviting me to this wonderful session because it's an honor to be able to discuss about health when it comes to gender-based violence. So as the introduction went, my name is Dr. Hamis Wanji. I'm working for National AIDS and STI Control Program, supporting the GBV and Human Rights Program, as well as the Adolescent. That's what AYP is, Adolescent Young People Program. And I'm supposed to discuss on the role of health combating abuse and long-term treatment of sexual abuse survivors, and looking at how Kenya does it, but what we can learn as far as the Philippines. Next slide. Okay. Can you hear me?
There's a little
Okay,
bit of a
so-
static, Doc, but we can hear you.
All right. This is just a map to show where Kenya is versus where Israel is. As you can see, it's quite of a distance. I think Israel is in Asia, although it's normally somewhere between Asia and Europe. And Kenya is on the eastern side of Africa. And I think what makes us the same is the issue of gender-based violence does not discriminate when it comes to the economic status of the country or your personal economic status. Any other issue, even the age and all that, you will see from our statistics that the data says it's higher for the younger people in Kenya as compared to Israel. But GB is GBV. I'm sure somebody has discussed what GBV is and what it entails and all the forms of gender-based violence, the physical violence, the sexual violence, economic violence, and all that. What I noted between Israel and Kenya is there's more economic violence in Israel as compared to my country. And I don't know how it is in the from what I was seeing, there's a lot of domestic violence cases. And looking at all these forms of violence, at the end of the day, we need to do something about it. Next slide. Next slide. I felt it's important to look at the life cycle of violence, and this is especially for the women, because the numbers are higher in the women as compared to the men. When you look at the life cycle of a human being, there is before birth, then they are born, then they become children, then they go through adolescence and all the changes happen with adolescence. After that, they go to the reproductive age where they're giving birth, then they get old. I'm looking at the woman because the numbers are normally higher in women as compared to the men. But it doesn't mean that men don't go through violence. They do go through violence, but the numbers are higher in women than men. So when you look at before birth, there are the issues of sex-selective abortion. We saw this in especially places like China. Is it China? Yes, some time back. I don't know whether things have changed right now. There is female infanticide. That just means girls who are babies are killed just because they're girls. And that has happened in quite a number of countries. There's the issue of neglect. So a child is born, they're not being taken care of well, maybe they're not being given food, or they're being mistreated, probably living with they're adopted, or they're living with somebody who doesn't want them. Then they go through childhood violence. You get the issues of child abuse. They might be told the trafficking comes in. The issues of female genital mutilation comes in. Malnutrition means the children are not being fed because they're not being taken care of. Then go through adolescence. Forced prostitution is quite high at this age. A lot of trafficking happen as well. Forced early marriages, that is also rampant in Africa, where children below 18 years old are being forced to get married. Psychological abuse, they're being beaten up, they're being raped. Then you get to reproductive ages. You find in some countries is what is called honor killings and dowry killings. So, for example, in Israel, we found a lot of honor killings because a lady has done something that they're not supposed to as a lady. So the family feels like they are dishonoring their name, so they kill them. Battery is beating, economic violence, issues of sexual abuse, femicides, sex work, trafficking, sexual harassment. And then when they're old, and I've seen this in my country as well, where the parents are being killed or being treated badly, or the children are waiting for the parents to die because they want to inherit what they have. So these are some of different ways. This like picture shows you the different types of gender-based violence that happens to women, but it does not exclude the men. It also happens to the men. Next slide. So my question to you is, what do our health systems look like? How does the Filipino health system look like? How does the Kenyan system, how does the Israel system look like? I'll give you some differences between Kenya and Israel. Maybe you can look at what are the differences when it comes to health systems, especially in your country. That's the Philippines. Next slide. So when you look at data, this is just the numbers that are out there. Kenya, in my country, the highest number of violence cases, and especially sexual violence cases, in the 12 to 17-year-olds. But when you look at Israel, the numbers are actually higher in the 15 to 44-year-olds. That's the age where they give birth a lot. Then domestic violence victims, from data even across the world, they utilize health services more than other women. If you compare women who are going through domestic violence and women who are not, the utilization of or the use of services is higher for the women going through violence as compared to the other women. In my country last year, 2 out of 5 survivors were adolescents, 10 to 17-year-olds. Last year alone, for every 5 women who attended the clinics for women, 1 was an adolescent aged 10 to 19. And then the other issue, I think Dilfuza talked about it, was the issue of women in psychiatric hospitals. You find people go to psychiatric consultants, psychologists, psychiatrists, because they're going through violence, but they don't want to talk about it. So they stay with their issues, these issues that they're having, but they don't want to share because they're scared of what their relatives will say, what the neighbors would see or think of them, or their colleagues. They don't want to be found out that this is what is happening. Next slide. So when you look at the whole cascade of care, meaning if I get violated today, where will I go? Or where does health stand? This is just a referral system, but is mostly, it's global. It's in many countries, not just in my country. And you find when someone goes through violence, they may either report to a community person. So the community person may be you, person, could be you as a priest, could be you as a nun, or you as a community elder, or someone who everyone looks up to. Or they may go directly to the police, or they may go to the health system. So what happened most, they might probably come to the hospital before they go to the police, because at the hospital, they are seeking services. They want to be treated. They want to move from there, but they are scared of their perpetrator. So they might not go to the police. So they will come, get treated, and then go home. But what does that mean to the person, to that person who has been violated? Next slide. Next slide. So I'll look at these differences as I explain how a health system comes in. When you look at, in my country, Kenya, the healthcare provider is most times the first responder. But you look at Israel, it's mostly the social support system that's the first responder. So what does this mean? I think Dilfuza alluded to the issue of psychosocial support for sexual survivors, gender-based violence survivors. If somebody is being seen by a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, they might probably be at a better place because they will receive what is called the first aid, the mental health first aid. So I come to you, I have been violated. I am probably suffering more from the guilt, the anger, the confusion, as compared to physical injuries. So you'll find this person who goes to see a psychologist or will probably have better chances of healing because you address what they are going through in their minds as compared to someone who goes to the health facility first. But that does not mean it's a thing, because you might go to the health facility, you get treated, and then be referred to see a psychologist. But then the issue comes in, what is the follow-up? How do people follow up after that? So in Israel, what we noted is the follow-up for psychosocial support is quite high compared to other countries. the issue of government funding for these facilities. It's very important because most of the time, I'm not sure about the Philippines, but we tend to rely mostly on donor funding or funding from the external sources. So once they pull out, what happens to the people in the country? The health systems cannot take care of themselves as they are. So it's important to have governments coming in and sorting out the health systems. Maybe I will ask you, how is the health system in the Philippines? Is it taking care of its people? Is there health insurance that helps people to even access mental health services? Am I able to see a psychologist in the Philippines if I have the national insurance? So these are some of the things we need to be very careful about. Psychosocial support is important for survivors. If you don't heal, then the effects. Next slide.
Wala eh. Okay ba? You know the best way to eat this?
You can move on to the next slide.
Ay, bet ko din yan.
So these similarities is just looking at some of the ways in which we are the same when it comes to this health system. But it's important to even reflect on how is it in the Philippines. Do we have technical working groups? Or do we have a consultation forum where people sit down and discuss GBV? So are you involved as the religious sector? Are you involved in the discussions that are held when it comes to GBVs? You know, studies have shown if a person, most people will look for God or for a higher being because they need something to believe in. So if you so most of these cases, they'll probably come to you. If I hope there will be some examples given on how you respond to sexual violence or GBV violence survivors. So they will come to you because you're a higher authority, and they're hoping when they do see you as a priest or someone working in the church, they might get that first read that they're looking for. As I said, the biggest issue is psychological. So the issues that go through their minds. So they will probably come to you. But then what do you do about it? So you need to be on that table discussing gender-based violence. You should be part of conversation because you are a primary responder in some of these communities. And studies have shown actually when you involve the clergy or involve the church, we get a better community integration for this person once they are treated and they have gone through that whole ordeal. They will heal better when they have also the spiritual aspects addressed or their spiritual side is addressed when they're being treated. Next slide. So what are the advantages or why should you refer? Because I think the most important aspect here is when this person comes to you, you need to refer them. But why should you refer them to the health services? Why do we have health services for these cases? Number one, not sometimes, most of the time, it's the only place where this person can be examined fully without any cause for alarm. Like if a person comes to me as a doctor and they have been violated, I might get them to, undress and remove all their clothes and because that's how I will get the evidence that I need to show that this person was actually violated. They cannot get that from you, from different person, it has to be at the hospital and it is legal to do that. And they might not be traumatized by that because it happens when you go to seek medical services. Number two, it's the only external body that can identify abuse, as I said, only from us when we are examining you that we're able to see that you have the abuses that you mentioned. Taking the history for us is also something to help us screen for other issues. So maybe when I'm taking your history, you're telling me you have been violated and all that, I might be able to screen you for other problems. You might be having other issues that have never come up that I may screen you for. So you end up getting a double treatment. the issue of multidisciplinary team. This just means a lot of people will review you. So I'll see you as a doctor. Somebody working in the lab will come and take your samples. You'll be seen by a psychologist or a mental health specialist. You'll be seen by a specialist, maybe surgical or something, depending on how the injuries are. So you get quite a number of people seeing that person and being able to take care of them well. Then the other issue is evidence collection. This is where we get the evidence that is needed to take to court, because at some point I will have to come to court and explain what I saw. So if that person is not referred to me, then what will they use as their evidence to show that they were violated? And then the treatment that they're given. For example, if someone went through sexual violence, then they might need to be given post-exposure prophylaxis for HIV. Because if the person probably who raped them had HIV and they don't get treated, they might get HIV, or they might need to be given drugs to help them not to get a sexually transmitted disease, or they might need to, get treated for the injuries that they receive. So they need to be referred because they need that treatment that they might not get if they don't come to the health system. Maybe someone needs to be given a vaccine for for hepatitis B. We know it can be transmitted through sexual violence. So a lot of management is done during that time. Next slide. So why are referral systems important? Number one, they are good for better services. If you see someone who comes to you in your position and you don't refer, then they might not be able to get all the services that they need. If it is well executed or if it is well carried out, then this person might not have to get re-traumatized. By re-traumatized, it means they don't have to keep giving the same story. If probably we have case workers in our communities, this case worker will be the one who gives the history to the next place that they are referred to. So it is important to have a working referral system. And this is where we all come in. You should be part of the discussion when it comes to having referral systems for the place that you live in. Referral systems means how does this person move from one service point to another? How do they move from the church to the hospital, to the police, to the judicial system, to the legal services, to the aftercare services, So this system needs to work. And for it to work, everyone has to be involved. Yeah. And then referral is also good for someone who's probably being referred for legal services, or they need to go to court, or maybe the person is still in danger and they need to be protected. So the referral system comes in handy when it comes to that. Next slide. Now, as much as the health systems have their use, we also have challenges that emanate from these health systems. Number one, sometimes you might get healthcare providers that their knowledge and their attitudes are different, or they have biases, or they have they have needs that may affect how they treat you. Yeah. Sometimes they may tell you something that as a survivor that may make you feel bad. So one of the challenges that comes in is we need to make sure that these healthcare providers are trained on how to handle these sexual or GBV survivors. Sometimes there's an issue of insufficient respect for the individual's autonomy. This just means if a person comes to me, I will want to treat them as I normally treat others, but the person should come to me and I treat them, this is what is called person-centered care. I treat them as they direct me on how to treat them. So if someone comes to me and they are probably a person who's been going through domestic violence, beaten by their husband or by their wives, and they come to me, I will probably want to advise them to leave. But you see, if the person does not want to leave, then I should not force them to want to go, because that is not my job. So sometimes this health workers' attitudes are an issue, and also the lack of respect. Because you see, if someone comes to me, this is an example. if I am a health worker, I'm like 50 years old, I've been married or something like that, and a 20-something-year-old comes to me, they've gone through violence, and I explain to them, you're young, you can leave, and they don't want to go. I'll probably end up giving them advice. So I'm telling them what I know from my experience, but that's not how it's supposed to be. Then the issue of sometimes these trainings integrated in the normal trainings for these healthcare workers in schools, or sometimes we assume the signs of abuse. So a person keeps coming to the hospital, they keep coming with headache or a stomachache, and I am not picking up on the signs that probably this person needs more help than what they're saying. The issues of what is a reasonable suspicion, what should make me feel, this person actually has gone through violence. So, and also issues of limited community-based services, because when this person leaves, they might need to get access to other services, but sometimes these services are not enough. Next slide. Next slide. So how does violence affect the different stages of a person? We looked at the different forms of GBV, but what is the effect of this GBV on an infant, on a child, on a teenager, on a young adult, old person? What is the effect? Next slide. So this is just a graph to show the different effects of gender-based violence. I hope you can hear. Sorry about the noise in the background. There are quite a number, as you can see. What I will explain is the color coding. So the ones with the black color are probably some of the complications, probably someone who was sexually violated. So they come in, they might be pregnant because they're young. For example, I've told you in my country, most of these sexual violence cases are adolescents. So they come in, they are adolescent girls, and they're already pregnant. So there are all these complications of pregnancies by young children. So they might go into labor too early, or they might give birth to babies who don't survive, or they might, their bodies are too young to carry these pregnancies. So what are the complications of the pregnancies that come with it? The dark blue is issues that come now following let's call them communicable diseases. These are diseases that can be spread, and then the risky behaviors that come from it. So this person probably gets infected by HIV or sexually transmitted disease. And then because of the mental effects of being sexually violated, and this happens a lot, especially if someone is not treated well, they start having what some people call ill behavior. So they probably want to have sex with a lot of partners, or they go into alcohol and drugs because they're trying to numb this pain. Yeah, but it's not them. It is an effect of the trauma because they never healed, or they start having unsafe sexual experiences or sexual practices. So they are sleeping around, they're not using protection. So they're still subjected to more HIV and sexually transmitted diseases. Then the long-term effects, because they have gone through, probably they started taking drugs, they started taking alcohol, then they started smoking, then they might develop what are called non-communicable diseases. They might become obese or overweight, or they are physically inactive. They end up getting cancers, they end up getting diabetes, hypertension, or stroke. They could get direct injuries. The brown area. So someone maybe was violated, they were beaten up, they get head injuries, they get burns. We've heard of cases where someone was beaten up and their faces burnt with acid, or the beating was so bad they developed fractures, or they got internal injuries. And then, as I said, one of the greatest effects is the psychosocial issues, so mental health problems. They go into depression, they go into anxiety, they get post-traumatic stress syndrome. I think we've heard about it. They become suicidal. So we've had cases that have gone through so much violence, they want to end their lives. Yeah. And especially the cases that don't talk. So we need to have what is called a high index of suspicion. And what is a high index of suspicion? What are these things that we need to look out for us to think this person might be going through violence? Next slide. Next slide. So what are these signs? I'm teaching you this. I know this is some of the things that we look out for in the health system as medical people, but it's also good for you because, as I said earlier, most of these people will actually come as a father or you as a priest or you as a church person. So what are these things that you should look out for? If someone keeps having ongoing mental health illnesses, they're always anxious, they're always going into depression, and it's unexplainable. Maybe it's not a lack of resources, but they keep getting these mental health problems. Number two, if they keep coming to you with repeated or unexplained injuries, meaning they come with burns maybe, or they have pains from places they've been hit, or they have like they've been beaten, or they have fractures that you cannot explain. And especially in children, it's very common in children. When you keep getting a child who comes and the story you get is they fell down the stairs or they were playing, they got hit, but it keeps happening more often than not, then it's something that you need to look out for and say, probably this person could be going through violence. Or people with harmful behaviors, especially the adolescents. A girl or a boy were doing well, then all of a sudden they're taking alcohol, they are partying too hard, and you can't explain. It's not like they have like it's unexplainable, like someone's behavior just changes all of a sudden, or someone tells you I've been feeling like committing suicide or harming myself, or the person keeps coming with signs of sexually transmitted infection, or even people with pregnancies that they cannot explain how they got pregnant, and the issue of pains here and there that you don't understand. I'm having abdominal pains, I'm having headaches, I'm having, sexual problems, and it doesn't make sense or it doesn't add up. These are some of the signs that we look for abuse. Next slide. So I felt this is important to put it here because, as I said, this a survivor can come to anyone. They can come to me as a health person, and they can also go to you as a church person. So there's what is called being trauma-centered or being trauma-sensitive. Yeah. How do I respond to you when you come to me with such a problem? Yeah. Instead of asking you, what did you do? What were you wearing? Or what did you do for your husband to hit you? Or what did you tell him? Or did he tell you to do something and you didn't do? Is that why you're beaten? We need to be more sensitive. Don't ask such questions because it is never a survivor's fault. Yeah, no one deserves to be beaten. No one deserves to be assaulted. No one deserves to be raped. Yeah, even if they provoke, as people say it, you provoked it. It doesn't happen. No one deserves to be beaten. So instead of asking such a question, you can ask the person, what has happened to you? Or what can I do to keep you safe and healthy? Or what do you want to do now that that has happened? What do you feel would be right for you? Yeah. These are some of the questions you can ask instead of asking questions that are blaming the survivor. Next question, next slide. So I felt it's important to put this here because sometimes this person will tell you, my husband beats me, but I'm still going back. I don't want to leave because he takes care of the school fees. He takes care of our needs. I don't have a job. So instead of forcing them to go, because you cannot force someone who doesn't want to go, you can give them what is called a safety plan. Yeah. So plan you can ask them if things escalate or become really bad, where can you go? They'll probably tell you, I can go to my sisters, I can go to my mothers, I can go to my neighbors. And then if they have children, yeah, would you take the children with you? Are they safe? Do you need to take them? Do you need to leave them? Yeah, these are some of the considerations. How will you get there? Then start advising them. If you don't have money, start keeping some money, a bit. Keep a bag somewhere packed with some drugs if you need them, some money if you need them, passport, ID. If you need to leave the house in a hurry, what is that bag that you would carry that would help you to leave and actually go and survive somewhere? Is there someone that you can talk to? Is there a sign? Maybe you have talked to your neighbor and tell them, if you hear me screaming like this, no, this man is about to kill me, then ask for help. So don't be in a hurry to force people to leave if they are not ready to leave. But you can also develop a safety plan with them so that next time if they need to go, if things escalate, then they will be safe or they will know what to do. Next slide. So I think that's the end of my presentation. I hope you could hear me. I'm so sorry about the background, but if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hermes. Thank you for taking time to give us insights and your experience on combating gender-based violence. I think Miss Jane, our host, was disconnected. So for everyone here, if you have questions to Dr. Hermes, please feel free to chat or unmute your mic. Yeah. So, based from your talk, Dr. Hermes, I really appreciate and remember that the importance of collaboration of different sectors, especially in the role of health sector. What we realized during our training in Israel is because for us in the Philippines, we have like different agencies, and then when someone has a complaint or some has issues, so she should be go to the health department, to the social welfare department. But in Israel, it's a one-stop shop that they can um, they can attend to, they can be accommodated through that center, the Aluma Center. That's why very that's an ideal or a model for setting up a center that respond to the gender or domestic violence. So, any question po or feedback regarding the presentation of Dr. Hermes or any comment from our participant? Oh, maybe they are. Your presentation is very informative, and they don't have question anymore. Okay, so Dr. Ernst, thank you for taking time to be here. I know that you're very busy. You're flying now to where? Going home or you're going?
Yeah, I'm going to.
Okay. Oh, please take care. Yeah. So we will send also your certificate of appreciation later in your email. So in behalf of Caritas Philippines, I really would like to extend our appreciation in your generosity of taking time, even you are so busy person. And regards. I hope to see you again. Okay.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about this. Yeah, it happens. Thank you.
We understand.
Okay.
Thank you and have a safe trip. So, okay. Are we good? Mukhang napaaga po yung ating session. So, can I transfer to Filipino version now? Sige po, sa mga nahihiyang magtanong, congrats po. Thank you po sa, wala namang comment. Thank you daw and congrats. So, for everyone who are joining in our webinar today, maraming salamat po. natapos tayo ng mas maaga, no? Kasi wala kayong masyadong tanong. Pero this one is, parang first part ng ating webinar. For tomorrow, mas, kumbaga, malapit sa puso natin kasi we're talking tomorrow about the role of PNP, of the SWD, because we would like to know how we at the social action, diba, in our social action center can collaborate. Kasi diba, usually we encounter, lalo yung mga natin po, usually yung mga tao lumalapit, Father, ganito, binugbog ako ng asawa ko, or ganito, may problema. Actually, even in Caritas Philippines, we receive complaints through our Facebook page regarding domestic violence, and sometimes they said, uy, pwede po bang patulungan kami kay Bishop, ganito, na patulungan. So, we need to know from the side of government of how we at the church na makatulong ba, maging kabahagi kung paano tayo makakatulong dun sa ginagawa nating prevention against gender violence, and also paano siya i-address yung natin, yung mga concern. Lalo na tayo may mga, usually when we do the accompaniment program, we found out that we have women's desk sa ating mga social action center. May women's and children's desk tayo na naka-set up. Yung iba very active talaga, may center din na parang we parang protect yung nagkukup tayo kapag mayroong mga violence na nagagawa. We would like to know kung paano yung legal process, like how ito ba ay legal ba nating ginagawa to, or baka mamaya mapagbintangan tayong ganito na hindi natin i-report sa government, or anong collaboration ang dapat natin gawin. So yun po yung gusto nating ma-attain sa webinar nito. And of course, also, hindi lang more on parang, kumbaga, ay nandun na sa stage ng violence. So ang ating focus din talaga is yung parang may empower yung mga kababaihan. Kaya nga we have the SHEG program na tomorrow we will discuss yung naman yung response ng church, yung approach natin to prevent this domestic and gender violence. Pag-uusapan natin bukas after po ng input ng government agency, ng PNP, ng DSWD, we will share how the Catholic Church through social action centers respond doon sa gender-based violence, or wala pang nangyayaring violence pero we're on parang preventing it na through our programs and projects. Gusto din natin bukas malaman yung during, for example, parang may disaster or ganyan. So paano ba napoprotect din yung ating mga communities, yung ating mga kababayan during the calamities, kasi mas prone sila sa mga violence. So bukas po natin yan pag-uusapan. To everyone na nag-attend po today, actually na-surprise po kami na napakarami nating participant coming from the schools, from the universities, and other partners. So we really appreciate your presence here. Yung question po sa certificate tomorrow, we will send po yung certificate through email, kasi you register po, di ba, through registration form na sinend namin sa inyo. So we will use your email to send back yung yung certificate of attendance. And then I would like also to extend our gratitude po sa Israel, sa embassy ng Israel, at sa ating mga partners sa Philippine Commission on Women, and of course sa aming mga classmates, our fellows in the international conference na they joined today to hear our conversation on gender-based violence. So thank you so much po sa lahat. Dahil po dyan, nagtatapos na po muna yung ating session for today. Yung presentation po, we will send din lahat po ng presentation sa email. Dahil Miss Aba, tayo lang ang nakakamera dito, pwede ba kitang mahinga ng closing prayer? Gender empowerment to. Sige po. Tayo po ay magdasal. Ayan ang si Brother Roman. Bukas si Brother Roman ang ating opening prayer. Pwede po ba? Nag-ano na tayo, nag-assign na para bukas meron na mag-opening prayer. So si Miss Ava po ngayon, request natin ng closing prayer.
Your Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Panginoon, maraming salamat po sa binigay niyong araw na ito at sa napakagandang pagkakataon na marinig natin ang mga bagay na akala natin ay alam na natin, pero ito ay nagmulat pa sa atin sa panibagong hakbang sa bawat isa sa atin nandirito upang mas marinig pa at mas matulungan pa yung gusto pa natin ma-reach out na hindi pa pala natin nalalaman. At dito, dahil sa meaningful conversations na ito, ay nalaman natin ang mga iba pang realidad sa hindi lang sa ating bansa, kundi din sa ibang bansa. Maraming salamat. Pagpatuloy niyo po kaming gabayan, Panginoon, sa mga susunod pa pong araw. Bukas po ay sana po ay mas maging maayos at mas maging mas matagumpay ang aming mga discussions po bukas. Salamat. Amen. Yes, Amen. Spirit.
Thank you, Miss Ava. Thank you, everyone. See you po tomorrow, same time, 9 o'clock. Opo.
Okay.
Announcement lang po dun sa mga estudyante namin sa program management. Switch lang po tayo mamaya ng konti, 3:45 sa ating pong program management course. Yung mga nandito po na estudyante natin sa program management.
Hala, Jen.
Ayan. So maraming salamat po sa lahat na nandito ngayon. Good afternoon po.
Thank you po.